So this week is finally time to tackle a project that we've been postponing for a long time on the building of our new aluminum sailboat, the deck hatches. But eventually we need to do it, and we are going to start today. And the reason for that is because we really want to move the boat out of the shed to install keel and rudders. But in order to do that, we want to finish as much as possible the aluminum jobs inside the shed, because as you can tell, there is wind. And as soon as we come out of the shed, it's going to be a lot more complicated to weld. So the more we can finish inside the shed before we transfer the boat out, the best. And this is a really sensitive one because it needs to be watertight and it cannot warp. So it needs to be done inside the shed. Let's get started. The reason why we're postponing to install the hatches is because I was, first of all, not sure about the hatches we're going to use, but also because we didn't know how to attach them to the deck. There are many ways we can do that. So originally, I asked the boatyard when they designed the boat to do the same as we had on Odd. That, to be honest, it works really well, but there is one catch. So this is one of the frames built by the boatyard. So this is how Odd, our old boat, was built. We had a frame like this, like an L-shaped frame, that was welded to the deck, higher than the deck. So that means, imagine that this is the deck of the boat and that's the frame with the hatch in the middle. And this was not welded flush, it was welded higher than the deck. And the reason for that is because the screw would go through this lip and not through the deck. And that means we had no bolts on the deck, there was no holes on the deck. The only problem about this idea is that all the lines from sailing get cut here. Every time you tack the Genoa, it would always get tangled around the hatch, and that sucks, to be honest. So pretty much we decided with the same solution because we didn't see any other way that we like. So the problem is, if we go with this solution, that means we need to build new frames. So as you can tell, the frame built by the boatyard is not flat at all, and that's the most flat one I have. The other ones that are built already, they're really warped, and if we weld this on the boat, that means the hatch is going to be warped, and that means it's not going to seal properly. So that means we need to build another frame, and that is really complicated because this is a lot of work, because we need to get this round shape and we don't have the machinery to do that here where we are building the boat. Now we are not on a boatyard. So if you're not going to use this solution, that means we have a few other solutions that we can go with. The first one that came to my mind was to weld a really thick, like 20 millimeters plate to the deck, and then have the hose just tap it to this thick plate, not going through. And that means if any water gets through the hole, it will get only to the thick metal and never gonna go through and never gonna have a leak inside the boat. And then I talked to a few people and I kind of changed my mind on that solution, even though a lot of boats are built like that. For example, I have a good friend with a 53 beautiful aluminum sailboat that we sailed before, and he has this solution and he said it's good, it won't leak, but also you won't take the hatch off after a few years. So he said his hatch has been there for 12 years and he cannot take them out. He needs to just, I don't know, drill through the screw, and it's a really hard task if you need to do that. So even though it doesn't leak, I don't think it's the best solution. Talking to the new designers of the boat, he said, in my humble opinion, as a sailor, because he lives on the boat for many years, I think more than 20 years, and he right now lives on the boat also, and he says, when I used to have my aluminum boat, I prefer to have screws that go through, and if they leak I can just replace the Sikaflex. At least I can take the hatch out, and at least it's less problem with corrosion, because you don't need to have the threads on the hose. You can have a bolt on the other side, you can have the nut on the other side, so that means you can properly secure to place, and I think that's what you're gonna do. And for that, instead of using 20 millimeters that we don't have, that's another problem. If we go with the 20 millimeters, means we need to buy a lot of 20 millimeters plate because you waste a lot of material in the center. We're gonna go with 12 millimeters. That's already thick enough to a screw that goes through, but we have the material, because we have the material for the old keel that is right here. And I can use that to cut the material myself. I was gonna send to someone to CNC cut the frames, but I just could not find anyone willing to do it. The only company that I found that actually CNC cuts aluminum with my own material without buying their material is someone that just sells business to business, and we're not a business, we're just private, so we cannot do that. The other ones, they said we can cut, but we cut from our own material, and that's gonna cost you close to 1,000 euros. I'm not gonna do that if I have the material, so it is what it is, we need to cut that. So now the idea is that I get these little templates that I did. So these templates I print and then I cut to the exact size of the frame I need. I need to position the template into the plate. Then I'm gonna mark with this pen, that's a tungsten pen that I can mark the aluminum, and from there I can cut the aluminum. The tricky part here that I'm not sure if it's gonna work, to be honest, is that most of the methods that I can cut this aluminum, it warps a little bit. Because the problem is that when you heat up the aluminum, it warps. So if I use the track saw, I need to do really slow with a lot of oil. Yeah, it's complicated. I can seem like not happy at all this week, but it's just, I'm just worried about the project. I just really hope we get it right. Otherwise, it's a lot of trouble to make new frames and to, I don't know, fix problems. And I know that this project is something that is really sensitive to warping. That's the main thing. Here is sensitive to warping. When we weld to the boat, is sensitive to warping. We need to be really careful on how we do things now. So far, I cut all these straight lines. I didn't cut the curves yet. So the straight lines I cut with the track saw because it's a lot more precise. The curves, there is no way I can do with the track saw, so I need to do with the jigsaw. What I'm not sure yet is if I'm gonna cut both curves, the inside and outside, so this one and this one, or if I'm just gonna cut the outside and leave the inside one to cut once it's welded in place, because in this way it's gonna help to not deform the plate once Peter welds on the deck. It might help, so I don't know, I'm gonna ask Peter before I do that, but the outside edges I need to cut anyways. But so far, so good. It doesn't seem like it's too warp. That's so cool. I just created a little jig, really simple one. I just attached to the bench a belt sander, 90 degrees. So it's square to the bench. And now I can get the plates that I'm building the frames for the hatches, and I can round the edges perfectly, because cutting the edge of a 12 millimeters thick aluminum with the jigsaw, of course, is not 100% round, it's not perfect, but with the belt sander it's much easier to fix. That helps a lot. By the way, Peter asked me not to cut the center of the plate, so the frame is gonna be just this thick, but he preferred to leave like this so he can weld in place and have less distortion because it's much more stiff right now. And then he weld around, and then I cut the center and I install the hatch. So now that all the plates are cut to the right size, I just need to create the holes on the deck. I mean, you're gonna ask, but didn't you do that months ago? Yes, I did, but the size of the holes were made for a different kind of frame, and with this kind of frame that I decide to go with, it needs to be larger, and that's good news, because if it needs to be smaller, then I would be in trouble. I just need to make a little bit larger and we're good to go, and we can start welding these frames in place. I cannot wait to have a boat with hatches. It's just gonna be amazing. It's just, I've been struggling with this decision on how to install the hatches for months and months and months. Let's hope it works. So Peter is just starting to weld the second hatch. The first one was the tiny one, and the reason for that is because we wanted to start with a small one to make sure we get the process aligned, because there's so many different ways we can weld that frame. The order of things, it matters a lot. So the experiment that we did is we cut the right shape, we tack weld really closely on the outside, then Peter do stitch welds on the inside, and then he goes back to the outside, grind off the tack welds and fully weld the outside. Of course, everything in small spots, because if he do everything at once, it's gonna warp all over the place. So the idea is, when he just tack weld, he tack weld in the center, in the other center, in the other center, the other center, and then the outside, and he keep moving around and waiting to cool it down in between. And then when he goes down, he do 4 spot welds, wait to cool down, another 4, wait to cool down, and moves on. When he goes to the top, he also starts from the center and do like one, like I don't know, 7 or 8 or 10 centimeters line, go to the other side from the center out, the other side center out, and keep waiting to cool down in between, otherwise it will warp. That's it, there is no way. And we are trying to avoid warpage at any cost, because if it starts warping all over the place, then we're in trouble and it's going to take a lot longer to finish the project. So far, I think we're doing good. Right now, he's starting to do the second hatch. That is the trickiest one, the largest one, and it's a pretty big one. And hopefully we can keep on the same level of warpage, and then we're good. I think it's working, it will work. By the way, I need to thank Chris, our friend from the Ghost Ship, because he's been helping a lot, like he always does. And this time, of course, I've been messaging him to get tips on how to weld the frame without warping. And one of his tips was get 1 or 2 blocks of aluminum, really thick blocks, and put on the plate while you're welding to work as a heat dissipator. And it works a lot. Like the block was really cold when we put there, he welds, and suddenly the block's not cold anymore, and then it's a little bit warm, and it's helping to transfer the heat out of the plate, and that means it's just dissipating the heat, and that warps less the material. And also we did some relief cuts to make sure we have space for expansion of the plate, because when it warps, the reason why it warps is because there is heat, and when it heats, it expands. So that means it warps because there is no space for the plate to expand to. So if we cut some relief cuts, there is a gap in between both plates that it's easier for the plate to expand. Check this out. All the deck hatches frames in place. That's just so awesome. This is literally a project that's been haunting my mind for a long time. This took so many hours of my mind because I was really afraid after the deck problems we had that was all warped, that once we put more heat in the deck, we would warp all over the place again. And luckily, we managed with a lot of patience. I don't know if you understood, but every time Peter welded a frame in, he put a block of aluminum on the top. That was a 60 millimeter thick block of aluminum. By the way, a lot of people ask, what did we do with the center of the frames that we built for the portholes? That's what we use for. We use as a heat dissipator for when we weld the hatches, and that helped a lot. Now we are within 2 millimeters of gap, and that's really good. There's no way we can be 100% flat, but we are really good because Sikaflex is going to do the seal, of course, and 2 millimeters is nothing for Sikaflex, so we are 100% good. The only 2 missing are these ones, but unfortunately I didn't do that in time because I needed to think about the position. It's really tricky to decide the position of a hatch that's going to be there forever in a boat. You're never going to change it anymore. It's really complicated. So now I decided that is the one for the galley. When you cook, the steam can go up, and that's the one on the table. So when you are eating, you can have breeze coming to you or from the back or from the top. So that means the best seat in the house is right in between both hatches, and then you're going to be really ventilated, and that's pretty cool. We need to put the hatches in place because we didn't see the hatches yet. Here they are. Yeah, of course I still need to do the holes for the screws, and I need to screw them down and seal with Sikaflex, but I'm not going to do that now. And the reason for that is because we're still doing a lot of welds on the boat. So I decided, let's wait a little bit, and if we go out of the shed before we put them in place, I'm just going to cover with some transparent material, And then once we finish the welding, I can install them in place because I don't want to damage these beautiful hatches. By the way, these hatches are made by Lumer in the UK, and the model of this hatch is called Ocean. The reason why we went with Lumer and the reason why we went specifically with the Ocean line is because we have a really good friend in Brazil that he is the wizard of glazing and hatches in the country. In the whole country, he's known as the best. And he is like, there is no way you're gonna go with something else because you're building a really good boat and you need the best hatches, otherwise eventually they're gonna leak. And you need to go with Lumer, you need to go with Ocean line because they're just the best. I have fixed any kind of hatch, any brand, any model, and that's the one that I fixed the least. And that's the one that when I need to fix, I have parts available really easy to buy anywhere. So that means it's a no-brainer, you need to go with that one. And that's why we decided to go with this one, because we trust him. Pretty much that's it. We didn't even choose, he chose for us. And I'm really happy because they're really, really, really awesome hatches. And by the way, we didn't choose to go flush hatch because it's an aluminum boat. I don't think it makes sense to have an aluminum boat with flush deck hatches because you need to do drainage and then eventually it clogs. You might get more electrolysis on this. It's just, I don't think it makes sense. For me, the hatch should be higher than the deck. In my humble opinion, should be even higher than we did. We didn't do higher because we didn't have the plate to go higher than that. For me, it needs to be higher because it avoids problems. And on a boat, all you want is to avoid problems. On the roof, as you can see, we're gonna have two little ones. The reason for that is because the height of our boom won't allow us to go any bigger than that. We could go with a sliding hatch that Lumer also sells, but I don't know if it's the right one for us. I just prefer the one that opens sideways. So we decided we want to have two, and they're gonna open to the side, not to the front. And the reason for that is because when you're sailing, this roof is really high, and I believe in a lot of conditions we can leave that hatch open. And that means we can choose which side we are sailing, and we can open that one. I think it makes sense. For the deck ones, we're open all to the front, and the reason for that is because we're gonna mainly sail to warm weather places, and then we want more breeze. If we go to cold weather places, it's gonna be not the majority of the time, and then of course it will be better to open to the back, but it is what it is. You need to choose one, and we chose to open to the front. Also, there are another two hatches and another port light that we need to install that we didn't do yet, but that's future project. We are gonna have one port light right there, porthole. So this porthole is gonna open. This originally was supposed to be my workshop. I'm not sure if it's gonna be the workshop or the technical area, but if you're gonna have a lot of equipment inside and you want to work inside, it's good to have some breeze. So I decided to open that for breeze and for light, but we changed the shape. I have no idea which porthole that the boatyard designed that for. I cannot find any porthole with that size, and that means we need to weld a plate to change the size of the hole, and that's gonna be a nightmare, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. And also we're gonna have two deck hatches, one here and one there. Yes, we're gonna use deck hatches as a window that opens, so it's the big 70 by 70. I want them to be flush with the bulkhead. It's gonna look much nicer. And here there is no rain, it's under the roof, so there is no problem for me. It's also Lumer, but it's flush hatches, and we're gonna install later because one of our next projects is to reinforce this bulkhead that, as you can see, is not strong enough. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see, but it's not straight at all. So we need to straighten this up, build the frames, and then we're going to install that. That's one of the next projects. So a quick tour of the hatches. This is the bow cabin, that's the shower cabin, that's the head, that's the hallway, and that's the center cabin.